Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're going to go over the installation for the cloud. Why would you use the cloud? Best thing I've ever heard is the Amazon, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud. Their internet doesn't run out. Your internet might. You need things to run perpetually. You have an algorithm working, and you don't want to run it every day. This is me, right? Be as lazy as possible so you don't have to make the trades. Obviously, some trades are impossible to make as a human being, and you need to hit the API. So, anyways, you've got a good strategy. You follow all the other videos. Now you're like, I want to deploy this guy. Well, first you need the cloud installation, and I'll try to give you the quickest run through as possible, as long with maybe a couple gotchas. The first time I set this up, it took me some time. I definitely recommend coming down to this step right in the beginning. Definitely read through everything here. But creating the cloud server, Brian has already created an available Docker and QuantRocket pre-installation that allows you to skip a couple of these steps. So you can use Amazon. I've used it plenty of times, or Google Cloud, used it plenty of times. If you just want to get up running and start developing the cloud as fast as possible, this is the best way. So click on is available. You'll see that you already have a droplet here that's called QuantRocket, and you can just simply create QuantRocket drop. When you get in here, I'm assuming you have a DigitalOcean account. If you don't, it's going to prompt you to make one, and then eventually when you click create droplet, it's going to come here. Just click whatever is best for you. New York if you're East Coast, San Francisco if you're West Coast. It honestly doesn't matter. This is again just a demo, and it gives you a bunch of things like what data center you're going to be at, and the QuantRocket you know image and all this stuff, and your CPU options. Again, if you're just trying to get up and running, this is like 1 GB, right? So it's a very small computer. Ones that I run in production, if it doesn't take too long and I don't need too much data, I run like 4 to 8 GB, so maybe 28 to 42 bucks a month. And then you can mess with the different types of regular discs. You can see they get a little bit cheaper, or if you want premium AMD versus Intel. I don't want to get too caught up. Let's just click $7 for right now. Let's make it even cheaper, $6 for right now, just to get up and running. And you can see everything else is already pre-configured for you. You don't have to mess with it. Pre-configures SSH keys, all the fun stuff, and click create droplet. You'll see this starts to create. It's going to take a couple minutes, and we'll come back once it's all set up and we'll go inside of it. Well, now it's up and running. Took me about a minute and a half. This is my IPv4 that it gives me, your IP address. Copy this guy, and we'll go back to the directions. Basically gone all the way through 4. Just those couple of clicks, getting it up and running. Fantastic. Now Brian says SSH into that server, which if you haven't done this, we're about to. Just type SSH. You are the root user for now. You can create different types of users. Non-root users is obviously best for security purposes. For now, I'm just getting you up and running. You can always lock this down more and more and more as you decide to move forward. Copy that guy in and just SSH into it. It's going to ask you sure, do you want any other names? Just click yes for now. It's going to add it to there. And then I'm going to click clear. And you can see now I'm inside of this server, meaning I'm no longer on my local desktop. I'm actually inside of that. And Brian says in the next direction, just run Docker info. Make sure things are up and running, which is good, right? You can basically, I get an output. Fantastic. My server is up. I'm just going to type clear, get out of here. The next piece is Brian says, hey, put a couple of these into config. That way, basically your SSH and your SSH key talk more easily as the time goes. So we can do that really fast. So now I'm going to go into this guy just to see the configurations. And you can see I already have them set up on mine. If not, literally copy and paste these lines from the other guy, save it, all the fun stuff. Click Control X if you're on Mac to exit out, it'll save it. Now we're good there. We're going to set up the domain. What does this mean? This means you need a website for this to work. And I know some of you are like, oh, I didn't know I had to do that. This is easy. And I promise it is, because this piece of text, honestly, before the DigitalOcean piece, actually used to give me nightmares. I'm like, I didn't know how to set up an A record. I had to have a buddy. And then I found out it was clicking a couple buttons, and I just needed to take 5 minutes to learn it myself. And so here we are. You will need a domain name. What do I mean by that? Some kind of website. You can have any kind of website, right? This is my website at whatever.com, right? I'm going to use a website that I already have. And for my individual one, I'm going to use Cloudflare. It doesn't matter who you use. So I'm inside my Cloudflare account. You can simply do another tutorial or just basically make a very easy domain. I'm assuming you have a domain. So I actually have one. I'm inside the website, no problem. Now I come to DNS and records. As Brian explains, hey, you're going to need to create an A record to match to it. That way your QuantRocket deployment will come through this, basically like this subdomain. Now this name right here, this is what you're going to make, quote unquote, your A record, and you're going to associate it with the IP address. Now you can see I've made this A record. I still need to click save, but it's just saying the QuantRocket dot. Again, I'm obfuscating out the individual website, because this could be any website. I don't want you to think that you have to use a website I use or someone else uses. This is just whatever your website is, QuantRocket dot that website. It's pointing to our IP address that we got from our server. The proxy status, I actually, for this demo and for any like just getting up demo that doesn't require like a VPC, which is a virtual private cloud, you do need to leave the proxy status set to off, and it's set to DNS only. If you read up online, everyone says, leave the proxy on, it gives you caching, it gives you, more protection, yada, yada. It's still protected behind the SSH keys, behind the password that you're going to create, and the domain name, all that stuff, just like it would be like you're logging into Facebook. So now I have my A record, which has QuantRocket. It's pointing to this guy, and it's going to be associated with my website. Now, after that part, Brian says, hey, do the username and check it out. Basically, make sure you can SSH into this just like we did earlier to make sure that that A record is pointing to the right spot. So now I'm going to SSH into this guy. And you can see that I'm inside of it. So it's good. The A record is pointing correctly with my actual website. It's all connected. So I'm happy at this point. Now we're back to the install instruction. It says install Docker locally. I'm assuming that you've already been up and running. If not, install Docker, no problem. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to follow a couple of these individual compose directions. But I want you to keep in mind, if you already have this locally set up, right? This is one thing the directions don't talk about as much. If you already have this established locally, like I already have like a local installation and a cloud installation, I'm going to need to create a slightly different directory. So for example, you might name this QuantRocket 1 and then CD into QuantRocket 1, or QuantRocket Cloud versus QuantRocket Local. It just kind of helps keep the YAMLs separate, and then you just bring that forward later on. For now, we'll just follow these directions exactly, assuming that you don't have a local installation. But again, if you already have one on your laptop, just change the name simply. Now we're just going to CD to our home drive, which I'm already at. We're going to make dir QuantRocket, which I actually already have. So you would click enter, and then you are simply going to CD into QuantRocket itself. And this compose file exists in mine simply because I've already downloaded it. In order to get it, you would just curl this guy. It's going to show up inside of this QuantRocket directory. And now you'll see this compose file here. So done with that step. Now here's an explanation on setting up the cloud environment variables. A lot of discussion. Basically, this is what is going to secure your cloud instance. You're going to create a username and a password, basically. And you're going to have the Let's Encrypt name, the password, and the user. This is what is sitting inside of the compose file that you just downloaded. So again, these are just discussion points. These are the points and the things that you actually need to do. SHENV, you can see I got a lot of them already. So I already have this file. Now, if I want to mess with it, you can use whatever command line editor you want. I'm going to use nano, and then I'm just going to go to that file. So inside of this file, these are the pieces that matter. It's the actual, obviously, the username that you select, which again, you can see mine's very long. The password, again, extremely long. Something that I can't even make up, right? I use I use like the ultimate password strength inside of password managers to really lock it down. And then the domain, that's the domain that you just set up, again, using the directions back over here. Each one of these guys, you can pick whatever you want, pick a strong password. That's what I just showed you. And then obviously here's your QuantRocket at whatever your website is.com, and then source the env. That just basically uploads and reloads these environment variables so they're ready to be used. If you forget to do that, sometimes people just close the terminal, then reopen. If you forget to do that, those aren't going to load when you start going to the next step, so just don't forget that step. Now, the next step, Brian suggests making a cloud context, which you'll need, especially if you're using Docker, right? It's like, how does my local Docker know that I'm talking to my local deployment or my cloud deployment? That's what this is going to help right here. So I can do Docker context create, and you can name this anything. You can name it cloud, which is obviously like makes the most sense. You can make it cloud demo. You can make it whatever you want. I'll just call cloud and then do Docker and then your host, IP. You'll click enter and then you will have a cloud context. What does that mean? It's kind of like a environment variable or a virtual environment. You can see that after I've created that context, I can run Docker context ls and I can see all my different contexts. So I have a cloud, I have a cloud demo, default, and a desktop Linux, right? So I have all of them. If you named it cloud, obviously you'll have this cloud just like I do. This next piece is just saying, hey, you're gonna need to throw basically the context flag each time, or you can just give it a default, like Docker context use cloud, Docker context use default, blah, blah, blah. Really the command that you need, like I actually want to deploy this, run this guy. You can see this looks very similar to the local installation. It simply specified the context as the cloud. And then you're going to be up running. It's going to create all these networks. Again, it's going to take some time, 10 to 15 minutes minimum. And then when you run Docker context cloud PS, like I've just created some of these you'll see like is 8 weeks ago. These should all show within the last couple of minutes that you created. This is just me messing around with a couple different things. That means that the containers are running inside of my server as expected. Here's a gotcha that's been in here. Don't simply try to connect to QuantRocket at abccapital.com. You have to use the HTTPS variation of this. So you can see at the end of this, I am inside my deployment. I went to https.quantrocket.mywebsite.com, and now it asked me, in order to get in, it asked me for my username and my password, and now I'm inside. This looks exactly like the local installation, but now I'm set up in the cloud, so I can run things like cron jobs that will perpetually run even if my local Docker is not working. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. Leave any comments or any questions that you might have that are, confusing points. I'd love to answer them. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.